guys, Ross Jeffery here. I am here to do a reading for Brad's October Halloween extravaganza. I am the author of Juniper, Tome and Only the Stains Remain, plus some other bits. And I'll be reading a short story from my debut collection, Beautiful Atrocities, which should be out hopefully at the end of the year or beginning of next year. And the story I'll be reading is called The Collector of Ruined Things. I do my best work at night. Some people would call me a thief. I'd call myself a collector and distributor. The things I collect I never keep. In fact, they pass through my hands like sand. It's strange what people request, peculiar what fetches a pretty penny. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. But people want what they want, and I try to provide what I can, when I can. My job doesn't afford me the luxury of friends or time to acquire them. It's quite a lonely existence, the graveyard shift, but I enjoy the quiet it affords me. When everybody else is tucked up safely in bed and sleeping like the dead, I'm at work, cataloguing and moving things around. But I don't mind the lonely existence. I never was good talking to people anyway. My little hobby started with pilfering things that people wouldn't miss. Under the cover of darkness, in the silence of the night, I'd find myself standing over them, staring down whilst they slept, eyes closed and bodies still. They were completely unaware I was only inches from their faces, breathing heavily as my fingers poured through their personal effects. I pinched many things spanning a good many years. Spectacles, pocket watches, necklaces, designer shoes, and sometimes even cash. It was pocket change mostly, but on a good day, I'd find a money clip. Stealing, or as I like to call it, borrowing, wasn't exactly hard. It was child's play. People don't realise how vulnerable they are while they're sleeping. They think they're safe and secure in the land of the dead. But I never feared they'd wake, and I guess that's what emboldened me. I became carefree, wanting to take more and more. Tonight's item, however, could get me into a whole lot of trouble. It's a lot more than I normally take, and trust me, they're going to miss what I'm about to borrow. There are a lot of sick people out there, many I've come to find that are sicker than I. And many of those people have become my customers, acquaintances, and dare I even say it, friends. These faceless friends collect peculiar things, oddities to feed their strange fetishes. And after a few months of dabbling on the dark web and a site called Sinbay, I'd found something akin to a community, a place to belong in a world I felt I didn't. It kept me occupied when I should have been working. I'd never known I could make money from the things I'd collected, but I did, I have, and I can't stop now. It's become somewhat of an addiction. I've been able to turn this hobby into something of a career. A sick and twisted one at that, but it pays, and it's a whole lot easier than my real job. It's no wonder people turn to a life of crime. The pool so alluring, and the money so rewarding, and of course the stakes so high. If you could bottle this feeling, people would buy it and shoot it into their veins to taste that feeling of sweet oblivion. I'd found that my tenement was the best place to start. I knew all the residents, not by name, but what they looked like. But finding out a name is easy when you know where to look. Crumpled birth certificates, driver's licenses, bank cards. Everything's to hand if you have the time and the inclination. It all started with Dorothy Peters, the 87-year-old from number 7. I'd had a peculiar request from a user called Nailbiter97. To think there were possibly another 96 other nail-biters out there made me feel a little peculiar. With their order logged, I set about acquiring the requested items. Holding the cold handle to Mrs. Peters' door within my grasp and ensuring no one was watching, I pulled the handle down and it clicked open. She was still, silent. They're always so peaceful when I visit. I stared at her for a while, that frail body under her sheet, completely unaware. I lifted the cover slowly to expose her feet. They were arthritic, the toes curled into themselves like gnarled roots. It was going to be a task to get what I needed, but I'd take my time and make the harvest. I slowly and delicately clipped her toenails. They were harder than I thought, thick and yellowed. But I continued, the sound of the clippers shockingly loud, but she remained oblivious. After a long moment, I retrieved the discoloured crescents, put them in a jar and left. I sold those 9 toenails for £38, and would have gotten more if I'd been able to get all 10. But her pinky toe on her right foot was so malformed, I couldn't prise it away from the others. I was ecstatic. £38 was a great haul for something people normally throw away. The next request was from I Chew Hair, but there was a stipulation to this one. It had to be from a young girl. I had a limited pool of resources given my tenement, so I settled for Jessica Day from number 12. Again, I let myself in under the cover of darkness. I crept up on her slowly, and as I gazed down, I found her looking like a china doll. I reached out my hand and ran her blonde locks between my fingers, her hair the scent of strawberries and coconut. But it felt wiry under my fingers, dead. Wait, isn't all hair dead? It doesn't feel pain, doesn't scream out when it's cut. Only if you yank it from the root do you feel the pain. And so, with the tuft of her hair in my hand, I snipped it slowly, the slicing of follicles louder than I anticipated. It sounded as if I were cutting fabric, but she remained still. I'd become good at not being noticed. I'd managed to sell that clump of hair for £100 after telling I Chew Hair she was 17. I'd included a photo of her driver's licence for proof. They'd said that she was too old for top shelf payment, which could have quadrupled my payload. I thought about not sending it, that I'd find a better buyer, but £100 was £100, and so I sent it. There were plenty more dolls on the shelf if I needed one. Soon after, another request came through Sinbave from IP Freely. They said they knew someone from my tenement, and that this request was personal. They'd been bullied by this guy years back, and well, IP Freely wanted something from the now middle-aged prick to help him with closure. Jacob Harper was the prick's name, from number 22. He'd only moved in a few days ago, and I didn't know much about him. But that didn't put me off. In a supply and demand culture, I needed to get the customer IP Freely what he demanded, and I wasn't about to wait around and get to know the guy before pilfering his personal effects. I stood above Jacob, his torso muscular and ripped, after so much time spent in the gym. His body was indeed a temple. I reached out and touched his chest, feeling the contours of his muscles. My fingers skated down to his hand. It was the rings I was after. Each finger was bejewelled with signets and sovereigns. IP Freely only wanted one, but whilst I was there, I'd take the lot. Unfortunately, they wouldn't budge. I pulled, but they'd all become lodged behind thick knuckles. So I bent down, placed a cold, meaty finger in my mouth and sucked, lubricating the digit until it slipped off. I took every last ring. He slept through the whole sorry scene, my entire hand fellatio performance. I sold one of the signet rings, the one with the initials JH, for £360 to IP Freely, and kept the others. And that's kind of where I'll leave it. There is a bit more, but just a little bit of a tease. But anyway, thank you so much, Brad, for inviting me. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope that entertained you for a little while. And yeah, when this drops, I'll be all over it and chatting about it, so hopefully you pick up a copy. Anyway, happy Halloween. Speak to you all soon.